The film begins by showing a professor at the University of New Orleans named Gary going through his daily routine, starting with teaching classes in the morning and relaxing at home with his two cats in the afternoon. Due to the low salary of a professor, Gary earns extra money as a surveillance equipment technician at the New Orleans Police Department. While he is busy preparing surveillance equipment, Gary is suddenly shocked when a police officer named Claudette assigns him to be an undercover agent, where she explains that the current undercover agent, Jasper, has been suspended for assaulting a criminal. Gary panicked about this sudden assignment because he didn't want to die while undercover. Unfortunately, his superiors ignored his concerns. Consequently, Gary was immediately instructed to get ready and take Jasper's surveillance equipment. It turned out that not only was Gary shocked by Claudette's decision, but Jasper was also surprised because his position was being replaced. Once all the preparations are complete, Gary heads to a cafe for a meeting with Craig, a person looking to hire a hitman. At that moment, Gary pretends to be Billy, the hitman Craig wants to hire, but something surprising happens in the cafe. Initially, Gary appears scared when assigned to pose as a hitman, but he ends up not looking nervous or frightened at all. Gary even manages to portray a ruthless hitman so convincingly that Craig believes he made the right choice, spending a lot of money to hire Billy. At the same time, Claudette and Phil, who are monitoring from the cafe's CCTV, are also impressed by his acting skills. Once he secures the evidence he needs, Gary, still posing as Billy, says goodbye to Craig, and within minutes, the police arrive to arrest Craig. When Gary returns to the car, his two colleagues can't stop praising him. They are amazed at how well he played the hitman role, and they even drive him home. Upon arriving home, Gary opened his laptop to search for tips on becoming a good hitman. Initially fearful and reluctant, he became interested in delving into this profession. Gary now even uses makeup to match the clients he meets, and the results have been positive because he could easily capture many suspects. A few days later, Gary returns to campus to teach psychology and philosophy classes. Whether due to his role as a hitman and interacting with many suspects, he is now more confident teaching in class. After class, Gary chats with a girl named Alicia, who is his ex-girlfriend. Although they broke up due to differing political views, they still maintain a good relationship. Alicia, who happens to be on duty in New Orleans, stops by to check on her ex who has now been promoted to an undercover hitman. Since he has just been promoted, Alicia also suggests that Gary should start looking for a partner. The next day, there is a monthly meeting at the New Orleans Police Department, where Jasper expresses his desire to get his position back, but unfortunately, Sergeant Hank from the New Orleans Police Department refuses. It turned out, Jasper had been under scrutiny and caused public outrage because a video of him assaulting a criminal went viral on social media. Because of this, Sergeant Hank does not want to risk the police department's reputation by reinstating Jasper, especially since Gary's statistics as an undercover hitman are better than him. After the monthly meeting ended, Gary spent time reviewing the files of his next target, named Madison. But Gary immediately fell in love at first sight with the beauty of the person he was supposed to capture, and he arranged a meeting with her. At the scheduled time, Gary sat at the meeting place wearing glasses and a leather jacket. Not long after, Gary finally met the woman he liked. During this meeting, he assumed the identity of Ron. When he met Madison, she immediately confided in him about her marital problems with her husband, Ray. It turned out her husband was very controlling, not allowing her to work, eat much, or play music at home. Hearing these minor issues, Ron could only comfort her. Although she deeply hated her husband, Madison was not yet 100% ready to ask Ron to kill him. Ron understood her feelings, but before parting, he assured her that he was ready to help whenever she needed it. Ultimately, Madison decided not to kill her husband. Not long after, on the train, Claudette called Gary, asking why he wasn't his usual self, able to convince his clients to express their intent to kill. Jasper, who was present, immediately insulted him harshly. But Gary remained silent and listened to the feedback from his colleagues, as what mattered to him was that he could talk to the woman he liked. Several days passed, and Gary was busy attending the trials of all the suspects who fell for his acting skills. They all felt that Gary was manipulative, making them express their hatred and intent to kill someone. However, their dislike did not change the trial outcomes. These people were still imprisoned, while Gary continued his job as an undercover agent and hitman impersonator. On another occasion, Gary successfully captured a new suspect, an old man practicing shooting for hunting. The next day, while relaxing at home, Gary received a message from Madison. She invited him to a dog lovers community event. Hearing this, Gary hesitated to accept the invitation because he feared his superiors would find out. Additionally, Gary had a history of being allergic to dogs and had been bitten by a bulldog in elementary school. However, due to his love for Madison, Gary was willing to break his professional conduct and play with dogs to meet the woman he loved. Sometime later, the long-awaited day finally arrived. Gary and Madison met at the dog lovers community and played with dogs together. At that moment, happiness was evident on both their faces, where they continued to have a beer at a nightclub. In the dimly lit place, Madison suddenly confessed that she had feelings for Gary, which made the fake hitman both shocked and happy upon hearing it. Because of this, Gary immediately stopped drinking and went to Madison's house. Since that day, Gary's life, which was once monotonous, became full of color, as he no longer returned home immediately after teaching to read comics and feed his two cats. Now, after teaching, Gary would go to Madison's house and spend time together. Not long after, Gary's positive track record in portraying a hitman continued. With his acting and makeup skills, Gary managed to get a man who caught his woman cheating with his boss to express his desire to kill them. As a result, the man was arrested by the police. In court, the man's lawyer objected to his client's arrest, as the lawyer argued that his client was just momentarily angry upon discovering his wife's infidelity and had no real intention of killing anyone. It was only because Gary kept pushing his client that he turned to wanting to kill his wife and her lover. However, Gary denied all of the lawyer's claims, stating that everything happened naturally, as he did not push the suspect to kill anyone. Tired from police matters, Gary returned to Madison's house under the identity of Ron. Sensing that his boyfriend was in a bad mood, Madison took the initiative to invite Gary to get some fresh air outside. After that, they spent time shooting and partying at a nightclub. Unfortunately, misfortune struck Gary when Ray caught them in the parking lot, leading to an immediate altercation. However, Ray became very scared and stopped arguing. After that, Gary and Madison walked away from him. In the car, Madison said that Gary's actions were very cool because no one had ever protected her to that extent. After a long journey, they stopped at a cafe to order food together, and a romantic moment ensued. Madison knew that Gary was in a bad mood after meeting Ray. She tried to comfort him by saying that her relationship with Ray was truly over. As Gary started to feel happy again, misfortune struck once more. Unexpectedly, Jasper was also there, and Gary panicked when Jasper approached their table to talk to Madison. The next day, Gary resumed his undercover duties as a hitman, and he was very anxious seeing Jasper report last night's incident to Claudette. But strangely, his colleague remained silent. After setting up the recording device, Gary entered the cafe to meet the next suspect. In the cafe, Gary sat with his back to the suspect. After a long conversation to find the motive for the murder and coax the suspect into revealing his intent, Gary suddenly recognized the person. His suspicion was correct, because the person hiring a hitman to kill his wife and her new lover was Ray. Realizing that his girlfriend's life was in danger, Gary panicked. At that moment, Claudette was puzzled as to why her subordinate failed the mission, causing the suspect to panic and flee. But Gary also said he didn't know the reason either. As he was about to leave, Jasper suddenly got into his car, asking the same question. Fortunately, his colleague didn't know the reason why the suspect fled and the fact that he was the ex-husband of the woman Gary had dinner with at the cafe. After that, Gary drove as fast as possible to Madison's house. Upon arriving, he immediately revealed Ray's evil plan and urged his girlfriend to flee out of town. However, Madison responded very calmly, saying that her ex-husband wouldn't dare do anything because he knew her new boyfriend's profession was a professional hitman. The following day, Gary went about his routine as usual, where he taught philosophy and psychology classes in the morning, then went to the police station in the afternoon. At that moment, Sergeant Hank held an impromptu meeting to discuss Madison's case, particularly about the suspect who escaped from Gary. Sergeant Hank also informed them that Madison's ex-husband had just been found dead. After an autopsy, bullets and illegal chemicals were found in his body. Additionally, he added that Madison and her new boyfriend had been involved in an altercation with Ray in a nightclub parking lot, but the identity of Madison's new boyfriend was still unknown. Hearing this, Gary was extremely panicked and Jasper suddenly suggested that Madison's new boyfriend might be the killer. Because of this, Sergeant Hank agreed with Jasper's opinion and he ordered Jasper and Gary to find out who Madison's new boyfriend was. Without wasting any time, they immediately set off to carry out the mission. After driving for half an hour, they arrived at the nightclub parking lot. Just 5 steps from the car, Gary's heart started pounding because Jasper stated that Madison's new boyfriend was Gary himself. And the man who fled the cafe earlier was Madison's ex-husband who had just died. Hearing this, Gary denied all of Jasper's accusations. He even claimed that he didn't know Ray was Madison's ex-husband and that he wasn't her new boyfriend. After dealing with the police matters, Gary resumed his role as Ron and went to Madison's house. At that moment, he asked if Madison knew the latest news about her ex-husband. Sadly, Madison said she knew that the man she once loved deeply was now dead. Hearing this, he immediately hugged her, not wanting his girlfriend to be engulfed in sadness. However, Gary suddenly realized something and quickly withdrew. After that, he was shocked to hear Madison's confession revealing that she knew her ex-husband was planning to kill them both, so she thought it would be better to kill him while he was drunk. Madison was utterly confused by her boyfriend's panicked response, considering that Gary himself was supposed to be a professional hitman. Gary then revealed his true identity to Madison, which left her very disappointed upon learning that the man she loved was a fraud. After that, Madison immediately kicked Gary out of her house. Sometime later, Gary returned to the New Orleans police station for another sudden meeting. At that moment, he was shocked to find out that Madison had been named the main suspect in Ray's murder. While Gary was still reeling from all these simultaneous shocks, Jasper immediately cornered him by pointing out that Gary had been seen with Madison at a restaurant. Calmly, Gary responded that he had initially met Madison by chance while shopping at a convenience store. Apparently, Madison had thanked him for his advice during their encounter at the restaurant. Gary also added that Jasper was also at the restaurant and had conversed with Madison. Upon hearing this, Jasper was astonished by Gary's skillful response, as he had not expected his colleague, who was once a technician and always honest, to be so adept at lying and even capable of turning the tables on him. However, Jasper's efforts to corner Gary didn't stop there. He then suggested that Gary should go undercover as Ron again and meet with Madison. Sergeant Hank also agreed with Jasper's brilliant idea. Additionally, he felt that this was the only way to uncover the mastermind behind Ray's death. Shortly after, the entire team immediately began preparations, where Gary, accompanied by Jasper, drove to Madison's residence first. Once the whole team arrived and all the surveillance equipment was set up, Gary moved towards Madison's front door. Knowing that the police could only listen and record audio during this operation, Gary cleverly conducted the interrogation according to his superior's instructions while secretly briefing Madison on how to respond to avoid being implicated in the murder. This impressed Madison greatly. Instantly, her feelings of disappointment turned into love as she witnessed her boyfriend's efforts to protect her. They both successfully completed the interrogation process, and their actions yielded positive results. The police no longer suspected Madison and did not charge her with Ray's murder. That night, Gary drove around the city, unable to get Madison out of his mind. At the same time, he vividly remembered how disappointed she was with him for lying to her all this time. Overwhelmed by his thoughts, Gary finally gave in to his feelings and went to Madison's house. But when Gary opened the door, he was shocked to see Jasper was already waiting for him. It turned out, Jasper had anticipated that his colleague would come to see Madison. Additionally, he also knew that they had both lied and given false statements to deceive the New Orleans police. Gary was immediately furious and asked Jasper what he wanted and why he was interfering in their relationship. Jasper revealed that his initial intention was just to get his job as a fake hitman back, but now he had enough evidence to imprison them both for deceiving the New Orleans police. Jasper then demanded a large sum of money from Ray's insurance money, which belonged entirely to Madison. Hearing this, Gary was enraged by Jasper's threat and declared that he wouldn't get a single cent. Madison then told her boyfriend to calm down and listen to Jasper until he finished speaking. After talking for quite some time, Jasper suddenly lost consciousness, which confused Gary by what he had just seen. It turned out that Madison had put a large amount of sleeping pills in Jasper's drink. Realizing this, Gary spontaneously grabbed a plastic bag and covered Jasper's head, which left Madison confused by his actions. But Gary explained that everyone at the New Orleans Police Department hated Jasper, so no one would care about his death. Gary also added that this was a demonstration of his commitment to his love for Madison. Hearing this, Madison fell in love with him again, but this time as Gary himself, not as Ron. A few years passed. Gary is shown teaching psychology and philosophy classes at the University of New Orleans. This time, his class is filled with students, a stark contrast to the sparse attendance from before, and all the students seem focused on his teaching. After class, Gary and Madison picked up their child from school. Their relationship appeared more romantic than ever because they were living happily with their small family. The film ended on a very happy note. Moral lesson from the story: when life hands you a teaching job, make sure to practice your hitman skills just in case, because you never know when you'll need to fake it to make it. And remember, even a professor can play a deadly role if the salary is low enough.